It's nice living with an Italian. So
Yeah.
All right, we're live. What's up, everybody? I am Pete McKendrick with Roofer, along with Nick from Roofer and Corey from South Shore Roofing. And we are excited to have you guys on today as Roofer gets to host this three-part series with Corey. We've been talking about it for a while. Corey's a user of Roofer, but, also has done some amazing things with his company in a short amount of time. And, it just kind of came together here and excited for what Corey has to share today.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Nick and Pete. I mean, you guys have been really instrumental in, helping us adopt some technology. And really, this has been, I think, a couple years in the making. I mean, we've talked a lot about this, and we've talked a lot about like how to maybe use this technology in a better way. And my goal here is to help people understand how to use Roofer. A lot of people just use the measurements. And so my goal here is to help people understand how to use Roofer in the overall context of a sales process. But the only way to do that is to really dig into what the structure of a sales process actually looks like and why these tools are so important as part of that process. So this three-part series is going to go through the sales process. And this first one's going to really cover what the intake looks like. And when we talk about intake, that's our first interaction with a potential customer and how we handle that and how that sets up the second part, which is the inspection. And part of that is the pre-call, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But the roof inspection, what we're going to talk about is from a sales context and not from a technical or gathering information for the insurance claim or for we're not going to talk about any of that. We're going to actually talk about the how you need to handle the potential customer in the aspect of from sales, and then how that translates actually into our proposal creation and how we use that proposal as a presentation rather than just giving a price proposal. All right, so that's really what we're going to talk about. Okay. And just for everybody that's joining, we're going to go through the first section, which is the intake, and then Pete and Nick, if they have anything that they want to add or anything like that, we'll kind of cover that. Then we'll jump into the pre-call, the importance of that and what that actually is, and why every salesperson should be doing that. And then again, we'll pause, and then we'll get into the third part of this, which is the inspection. And we're going to spend we'll probably spend the bulk of our time on that, because believe me, we're just going to scratch the surface today. There is so much that we can talk about with this, but the idea is to give everybody a really good understanding of the process and kind of a high level of how this is going to be structured.
Yeah, that's great. One of the things that I want to mention, right, Corey, that you have an ebook that you've are giving away as part of this, right? And we've thrown it in the handout section. So if you guys click on your handouts there, you will see that that ebook in there as well as part of this.
Yeah, so I wanted everybody to understand the structure. So we have that ebook in here for you. We're going to post my email in here in case you have any questions or you want to talk afterwards. I'd be happy to do that. So just a little bit of a background. Why should you listen? Why should you listen to me? How do you know that I know what I'm talking about? I've been in the industry since 1995. I started with a tool belt on. I was a roofer. Then I got into the project management side. I got into the production side, and then I got into the sales side. In 2008, we had this crash, and construction was pretty much non-existent. So I had to find a job. And I had a friend of mine who he owned a company where they did marketing and sales training for health clubs. And so I used to travel across the country helping install sales processes to the gyms so that they knew how to sell memberships. And I know it sounds kind of generic, but they actually had a really neat system that they put in place. So what they would do is this is back in the telemarketing days. And what they would do is we would set up a call center. We would get an influx of people to come in and tour the gym. And we had this sales process where we brought them in. It's kind of like that free inspection type deal, right? So we bring them in, we toured the gym, and the whole gym was our sales presentation. And then we would sit them down and we would close the sale, right? And so after I did that for a while, I taught salespeople how to actually do that. So I learned marketing theories and fundamentals, and I learned sales theory and fundamentals, like what objections are, how to handle them, how to close, how to present, and how to structure everything based on the objections that are coming. And that's really the fundamentals of sales, right? And so I took that with all of my knowledge of construction, and I was the first sales job I had, I was the first person in that company to hit $2 million. And that was 11 years ago, right? So selling $2 million in roofing 11 years ago was absolutely unheard of. And so I just continued to refine that process. Then I opened up my own company, and I put all of those things in place. And right now, my sales team, I have 9 salespeople. They're closing at over 55%, which is in retail. So we don't do any insurance work; it's all retail. So we have a really good system, and I've used it in other companies. I used it in my company, and it works. So that's maybe a little bit of highlight view of maybe why I might speak on this intelligently. All right, so we'll just dive right into it. Let's see. I'm gonna share my screen.
While that screen is sharing, I think that's super important just to always talk about. I know a lot of people get into sales, just are good at talking. Like for me, I went from being an installer in roofing, got into selling roofing just because I was good at relating to people and going there. But having the structure to how to process and do a great sale from beginning to end completely changes the game and completely changes not only your success rate, but the replicability that you can do it. And this is why I think this training is so good, especially from someone like you, who's not only done it from beginning to end, like actual roofing and getting into it, but also starting and running a company with how many salespeople do you have right now? 9 different salespeople, and scaling your company up to where you are in such a short amount of time. It shows your success and really teaches people how to actually be successful in sales.
Yeah, that's a good point. And the other piece of this is, you have to have consistency, right? And so if you don't have a good process in place and you don't have something that is teachable. So I always tell my team, we need something that is teachable, we need something that's scalable, and we need something that's repeatable. And that's what giving you these SOPs or these standard operating procedures in your company brings. And so this is a standard operating procedure for sales. It's not the only one. It's maybe not the best one. I don't know, but it's one that works really, really well. And it's one that is scalable, teachable, and repeatable. And it gets everybody on the same page. It helps you train your team so that they're all telling the company story the way that they should be. It's consistently helping clients buy from you because you're giving them the information that's actually important to them, right? So the things that we're going to cover today, so we're going to talk about the client intake process. And the intake process is just your first interaction with the customer, how that needs to be handled, and some things that you can do to set your company apart from everybody else out there. Then we're going to talk about the pre-call. And what the pre-call is the phone call that the salesperson makes before they go out to meet the homeowner. All right. Ideally, you would make these in the morning, but I'm a realist and I was a salesperson. I know this call usually got made on the way to the house, right? So it just needs to be done, and you'll understand why after we go through it. And then the third part's the site visit, which is the inspection or the measure or whatever you want to call it. We're going to speak about what you need to do from a sales perspective, not from a technical perspective, meaning the pictures you need to take, what you need to look at. We're not going to talk about any of that. We're going to actually talk about what you need to do, your interaction with the homeowner from a sales perspective. So the first thing is the client intake process, right? You want to, there's three things that you want to do with that. You want to qualify, you want to schedule, and you want to set yourself apart from everybody else that they're calling. Most people are getting multiple estimates. And this is where you really start to begin the narrative of our company acts different. We treat you different. We are different. All right. And that starts with how we complete our intake. And the first thing is, for years, I've been saying this, and I've seen it happen. When I opened my company, I was so busy all the time, and I hadn't figured out how to answer all the phone calls. And when I didn't answer, people would leave a voicemail or not. I mean, a lot of times they just don't leave a voicemail, especially now. And I couldn't get them back on the phone. So it's really important that you have somebody to live answer the phone. The way that we filled this gap is we have a service. So I have two people that answer the phone from 8 to 5, 8 to 5:30. If both of them are busy on the phone, then we have an overflow that goes to a service, and that service, they are trained on either the new clients. We just have them schedule the appointment for us, so they have access to our CRM and all that stuff, so they can just schedule the appointment. Or they give us like an email and a notification on what the issue is, and we'll call them back. And that's for people that are current clients. But this is for new clients. We need to make sure that we have somebody answering the phone to set the appointment up when they call, because if not, you have a 60% chance of just completely losing that potential lead. The second one is you have somebody that's going to gather the relevant information. Obviously, the project type, we need to know, whether we do roofing, siding, windows, whatever it is, we need to know what that, what that project type is. We need to know what the lead source is. We need to track our leads, and we need to track not only our leads, but our leads converting to appointments. That's an important thing that we need to figure out, because we need to know if we're spending our money or we're spending our time and effort to generate certain leads, are those leads good? Do they translate to an appointment? And does that appointment translate to a presentation and a sale? So tracking your lead source is really important. The third thing is asking qualifying questions, finding out what their timeline looks like, finding out what their motivation for calling is, finding out, how they came to hear of you. Things like that are important, because if you have a customer that calls in, and we don't just do roofing, we do a lot of siding, we do a lot of windows as well. Some people will call and say, hey, we're just looking for a price. We don't really know what a siding job costs, right? So now we're going to ask them different questions than if somebody says, hey, we're ready to replace our siding, right? One of them's a shopper. The other one has given us the indication that they're motivated to buy from somebody. So we need to know kind of where they are in terms of, are they motivated to buy or not? Because we need to set up our sales team for success on that one. If they're just shopping, our sales team needs to know that, or we might be able to give them an idea on price so that we don't spend time running out there when they're just looking to just kind of get some basic information and they're not ready yet. I learned that lesson the hard way quite a few times. So, and then we also need to find out what their timeline is. Sometimes we get booked out, right? And if we have somebody that's expecting this project to get done in a shorter amount of time than what we can actually do, then we need to have that conversation up front first, so that we don't, our salesperson doesn't get into a situation where they're not going to be able to meet that timeline. We have somebody who's ready to buy from us, but it kills the sale because we're booked out for a few weeks or a month or whatever, and the person wants it done right away. So that's another thing that we need to find out right up front. And then the fourth part is we need to be able to set the sales team and our estimators or whatever, we need to set them up for success. We've got to ask questions like, are there access issues to the property? Are we actually going to be able to get our ladder up on, how many stories is the property? Is our team taking the right ladder, or is it a second story or a third story, or, or do we need to bring a drone? Things like that we need to ask. And is there somebody at the property that's going to meet us there? That's a really, really, really critical part, because we're not going to just go hop up on somebody's roof and not be able to talk to the property owner or the homeowner or whatever. We want them to meet us there. So we need to find out how we can make that happen. And then the last piece, schedule the appointment, making sure that depending on their timeline, depending on what project it is, what type of project it is, and all of those different things, making sure you set up the right salesperson to go run that appointment. In my company, we only have 2 guys that can do commercial. So we need to know if it's a commercial job. We need to know what kind of commercial job, because if not, we're not going to send the wrong salesperson out to a project that they really don't know how to estimate and a project that they don't know how to handle. So that is a really, that's kind of the ABCs of your intake and why you need to do all those things. So a couple important parts about the intake process. If you don't answer your phone, another company will, right? You're 50 to 60% less likely to schedule on a callback. Asking the right questions to your potential appointment will ensure that your sales team is prepared. We ask things about attic access. We ask things about property access. We ask things about ladders and drones. We ask all those things because we want to make sure our sales team is prepared when they go out there. The other thing is you want to set yourself apart. Obviously, you want to be friendly. I worked for a company where the person answering the phone, she just always sounded inconvenienced when people called. It was wild. My office was right next to her. And I'm just like, man, you're so rude to people, you can't have that. Right. And that sounds obvious and it seems obvious, but it was not obvious. And I mean, it was the owner's girlfriend's friend that worked there. And so, it was crazy how she answered the phone and how she talked to people. I couldn't understand it. One, obviously, being helpful is one, obviously, but there are some other things that you can do to set yourself apart from other contractors. So what we do in my company is once we have the appointment scheduled, all of my sales reps have an intro video, and it just says, "Hi, I'm so-and-so with South Shore Roofing and Exteriors. I wanted you to know who you're dealing with. I wanted to put a face to a name. My contact information is in the email. If you have any questions or you'd like to talk to me before I come out, please give me a call." That's one of the things that we do to set ourselves apart. And I'll tell you this, man, I can't tell you how many compliments we get with that. People love it. The other thing that we do is we do an intro video from the owner. So 4 hours after they get that initial email and text message confirming their appointment, we send out another text message that says a message from the owner. And it's just a video that I talk about a couple things to help them successfully interview contractors. We have a really high open rate on that, as a matter of fact. And then we host all this stuff on our YouTube channel so that people look at all the other videos we have out there on our YouTube channel. So what we're doing is we're starting to build credibility before anybody's even gone to the house. So that's what I'm talking about. On your intake process, you've got to do things, simple things, to set yourself apart from other contractors. No other contractors are doing that. And I'm in a big, huge competitive area, and nobody does that, right? So that's what I'm talking about. Simple things that you can do to set yourself apart from other contractors. And then the other thing is you have to make it as easy as possible for your prospects to be able to schedule an appointment. So whether that's over the phone, whether that's after hours where you have somebody picking up the phone, live answering the phone like a service, able to set appointments, or having book your appointment now links on your marketing and things like that. It's really easy to do. I mean, there's CRMs that have it. There's Calendly. I mean, there's a lot of different resources out there that you can use to create those book now links. So the easier you make it for people to schedule an appointment with you, even if you don't get to go through all of the questions and things like that, they'll book their appointments with you. And then your intake admin will come in on the back end and make sure that all of those things are taken care of before your sales rep gets sent out to the inspection appointment. Okay, so that's the end of intake. You got anything, Nick or Pete?
Nothing, Nick.
There we are. Yeah, I was going to. There was a weird lag there for a second. My system broke down there. But what I was going to mention is like one of the most important things that I think that you talked about. All those steps there, but it's that first step. Having a live person answer and having the person be happy and stuff makes such a huge difference. I can tell you, we talk about this all the time in these classes that I speak to hundreds of roofers a week, and how often I get one of three things: a call tree, which drives me up the wall. Like, hey, if you're looking for a repair, if you're looking to speak to, it's just like I'm hanging up almost right away.
People will hang up.
Oh yeah, right away.
Yep.
And then the other one is like right to voicemail, or even worse than that is no voicemail. I always think, like, granted,
Yeah.
I am trying to sell you something. I'm trying to see how a roofer can help out and stuff. But I always think when I'm calling these people, whether it's a salesperson or a business owner, when they do not have a voicemail, or sorry, they have an unprofessional voicemail, which is always wild to me,
or it's full,
and no voicemail. I'm just like, what? Yeah. You're leaving so much money on the table. It completely changes that mindset.
Yep. Yeah. You can't have a phone tree. You can't have an auto attendant, and these are things that I've tried out over the years, and they don't work because, and especially now, man, people will hang up. They just will. Right. I mean, I do it all the time. As soon as I make a phone call, and if I get an auto answer, I'm like, yeah, I don't need to talk to you that bad.
Yeah. I always say, like, when people are looking for roofing jobs to be completed, they're normally in a state of urgency. They're not planning ahead. They're not doing this. So you need to match their urgency with.
There we go. Yep.
If you put any friction in that pathway, they're calling the next person in line. And there's a lot of roofers in your market.
Yep. That is a great point. If there's any friction, and that's why I talk about make it as easy as possible for them to schedule an appointment with you, because if there's any friction upstream, they're just going to go somewhere else. Yeah. They're going to take the path of least resistant each time.
Yep. Now, Corey, do you write a script for your people for the incoming calls? Like, does everyone essentially answer the phone the same and ask the same questions to make sure that you guys are getting the information?
Thank you for asking a question that you know the answer to. Yeah, we have a full SOP just for our intake personnel. Yep.
Nice. Cool.
Yep. With the script, how to handle issues, all of that.
Cool.
Okay, let's dive into the pre-call. So this is where, we need to understand that each part of the process sets up the other part for success. So step 2 in this process is going to be your inspection. And your inspection, if you're not talking to the right person, if you're not dealing with the right person, if you don't really know what they're looking for, what their motivations are, all of those things, you're not going to be as well prepared when you actually get to the house and meet them, or get to the property and meet them, whatever. So this is why the pre-call is so important. And I want everybody to understand from my perspective about this, about step 2, which is your inspection, meeting the homeowner, doing all this stuff. All it is a fact-finding mission. That's it. All you're trying to do is you're trying to figure out what the homeowner, what the homeowner actually needs, what they think they need, what they're looking for, meaning, what are they actually looking for in the company they're going to hire? And again, spoiler alert, most of them don't even know. And then what they want to see happen, what their fears are with the project, all of that stuff. So that's a fact-finding mission. It's not our job to sell them on our company yet. It's not our job to go out there and tell them how great we are or whatever. Every other company that goes out there, every other salesperson's telling them those things, right? And I always use this analogy. It's like if you sit down with somebody, like let's say you're at a picnic, and you are sitting there eating your food, and somebody comes over and starts talking to you. And the entire time, all they do is talk about themselves. You're really not going to like that person very much, right? As soon as that person leaves and, your mom asks you, hey, what'd you think about Jim? And you're like, Jim really likes Jim. Jim talked about himself the entire time. You're not going to have a very good impression of him, right? That is what most salespeople do. That is not what we do. We actually flip the script and we get the homeowner to talk about themselves. People buy from people they like. And so in order to get somebody to like you in a short period of time, all you got to do is get them to talk about themselves. That's it. It's that simple. So first step in doing that is doing our pre-call, right? So step 1 is going to be confirm they'll be home, right? We need somebody there and actually for this to actually work. The person or people that we need there is actually the property owner. Okay. And then the last thing is we need to know what are their plans with the property, right? What are we looking at? What are your plans with the property? Are you selling the property? Are you, is this your forever home? Things like that. Very simple. And this phone call literally takes less than a minute, right? So we need to make sure we're dealing with the decision maker. All right. I've gone to properties. I've gotten there. I've not made my pre-calls before. I've gotten to the property and it's the dad, right? They're both at work and the dad's there and I'm trying to talk to the dad and the dad's like, I don't know, man, you got to talk to them. I don't know. You got to talk to them. I don't know. You got to talk to them. Extremely frustrating. So, from the intake process, we make sure that the property owner is going to be there. We let them know that we need to get in the attic or, any of that stuff. And we make sure that we're dealing with the decision makers. Some other questions that we can ask, really easy, quick, hey, what's going on? What am I looking at today? My office said that you guys have a roof leak, but I just wanted to confirm that information is correct. Sometimes they make errors. What's your timeline for the project? Right. Finding, that's going to help you find out where they are in the buying cycle, asking that question. Hey, what's your timeline? I want to make sure we'd be able to get to it. And they'll generally tell you where they are in the buying cycle and find out what's driving the project when you ask that question. Is this a project you've been planning for? Right. And that actually gives us an indication on how they're going to pay for it. If it's a full re-roof and they say, yes, we've been planning for this project, most of the time that means they've figured out how they're going to pay for it. If not, then we can start having the conversation about financing without directly asking them if they want financing, because that question in and of itself can be problematic. And we can talk about why that is later on if anybody wants to know. But directly asking somebody if they need money can be a problematic conversation. So making sure, hey, are you going to be there? We need to get in the attic. I need the homeowner here. So just confirming somebody's going to be there and then confirming that they're the homeowner or, the property owner or whatever, because again, we need to talk to the people actually making the decision to buy from us. So the inspection is setting us up for step 3, which is our proposal and our presentation. And that's when we actually sell the job and ask for the money. So that's step 3. We make no mistake. I mean, we don't make money by going out and doing inspections. We don't actually make money by going out and talking to homeowners. We make money by selling jobs. That is our primary purpose. That is our primary function. And all of this is a part of it. So our lead in to our presentation is critical. And so that's why we're going to spend a little bit more time, and we're going to talk about our 7 game changers on how you approach that inspection and why it's important from a buying standpoint. Okay. That pre-call, you guys got anything on that?
I've always thought like when the pre-call is super important, and it's very rarely utilized on it, but having the fact that like just to confirm, just let them know who you are, have that voice to a name, that if you have a face to the name with the videos that you send out as well, is super important to kind of, again, set them up for success. Let them know that someone's coming. I am dealing with a roofing issue right now, and the fact that like I'm not getting updated when they're coming, how they're showing up, who's showing up. I live in a condo corporation, and it's very frustrating that I'm a roofer. I could fix this, but I had to hold off. But it's the same thing. You want to have that pre-call and stuff like that. And again, when you're setting yourself apart from the competition and making sure that this customer who knows nothing about roofing, who's probably a little bit intimidated at getting quotes on something that they don't know, the importance of having that set aside to let them know, hey, I'm going to be here to walk you through this all. My name's Corey. Nice to meet you. I'll be here at X amount of time, is a great way to set off that relationship well and start to separate yourself from the competition.
Yeah, that's a byproduct. And so like I always approach, I mean, people are somewhat selfish. I don't want to say it this way. Like there's always this element of like, what's in it for me, right? I mean, if we that's just how we are as human beings. So this pre-call for me is purely selfish because I want to make sure that I'm dealing with the person that I can sell, right? The byproduct of that is I have a great conversation with the homeowner. We're continuing to further this narrative that we act different than other companies. And even if they don't acknowledge it, they'll see that we're doing things systematically different than everybody else. We're actually a professional contracting company. And that's what we talk about like, this is the difference. There's roofers and contractors, and then there's professional contracting companies. Which one do you want to deal with?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me on this is that it's proactive, right? It's not the customer calling you saying, "Hey, when are you coming?" or "Hey, what's going on with my appointment?" It's right from the very beginning. Now we're being proactive. We're communicating with them before they're communicating with us. And that speaks to that professionalism, right? Like it's laying the groundwork that we're the more professional company. Like we're going to get to you before you're even thinking about the appointment. We're already calling you saying, hey, here's some extra questions. Here's some things to think about. Here's who's coming. All of these things like the video, is laying the groundwork. And like you said, it builds your credibility as a professional company, all of these steps. And I think that's a huge piece that gets missed. Yep. So many times it's like, hey, I scheduled an appointment. And then a lot of times, I mean, you may never even hear from the person. They may not even show up, right? And you don't even know whether they're coming. So, I think all of these things put you, just like you said, they kind of level you up to being that, looking more professional in the eyes of the end user here. So I love that step.
Yeah, and it's saved me. One of the companies I worked for, we had a huge service area. I mean, sometimes you'd be driving an hour and a half, and that saved me from having to make that long drive because I'll call and they say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I completely forgot about it." Now I can reschedule with them, and I don't have to drive an hour and a half away and get there and knock on the door and be like, man, what the hell, you know? And then a lot of times when I would do that, I'm like, I'm just doing the inspection anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, you know, and then I'm completely out of my process. So yeah, that pre-call is a really, 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 I think it's an easy step, and it's one that's overlooked a lot, but it can set you up for success big time if you just have the discipline to do it. As a salesperson, salespeople that are out here listening. All right. So we're going to get into the inspection now, and we're going to talk about why it is that if you follow this process, why it is so diametrically different from what these other salespeople are doing. And I've even gotten to, you know, my sales team will tell me, they'll say, man, look, I was the only one that actually went out to the house and got on the roof. Everybody else is just, you know, pulling reports and emailing estimates. I'm like, oh, well, that's a slam dunk for us, right? I mean, we're going to win that job 100% of the time. So the thing you have to realize, though, and this is something we train on a lot, and I help my sales team understand this, is we are acting differently than a lot of other companies. And Pete, and I think you and I talked about this last time, is when you bring something up. So if they've talked to 5 different people and you bring something up that the other 4 didn't, how do you bring credibility to what you're saying versus the other 4 that didn't say that? Right? Yeah. It's a concerning point. So if you're asking for things that other people aren't asking for, which in this case is going to be their time to sit down to do a proposal, it's very important that you understand that. It's very important that you're asking somebody for what they feel to be one of the most important things in their life, which is their time. So you need to remember that when you're approaching this, when you're approaching it this way. All right. So let's get into that. Okay. So these are the 7 game changers to your inspection. The first thing that you need to understand, and this dovetails really nicely into, you know, you're asking people for their time, and we need to understand that people don't value experts anymore. When, you know, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when there wasn't the internet, we had the information that people needed. Like, we had brochures and we knew about the products, and we had information that they didn't have that was harder for them to get. Now that's not the case. They can go online and they can start looking at all different things related to roofing or construction or, you know, whatever. So because of that, most people think that they can just research what they need to research so that they can make a good buying decision. The problem is there's a ton of knowledge out there. The context and how to actually apply that knowledge isn't there. So our job is to provide context to the homeowners and not necessarily puke knowledge all over them. So understanding that and taking that tact and approach will change the way that you handle your sales. All right. The second one is approaching it with asking and trying to find out what they're looking for, not how you can tell them you're the best, or, you know, going out there and, you know, saying, hey, I'm the contractor, I need to tell you. That doesn't work anymore, right? So we need to understand that we need to approach it with what are they looking for. Here's the spoiler. Most of them don't know. They just don't. They think they do, but they don't. The other thing is asking them and talking to them, have they ever done a project like that before? Right? That question right there, and understanding how to and why to ask that question, is because most people have not bought a roof before. They have not paid for a full siding job. Most people haven't done that. And if they have, they've only done it maybe once. Okay. So the typical homeowner doesn't do this very often. And that's why I'm saying, like, they think they know what they're looking for, but they don't, because they just don't have the experience and the context to actually know what they're looking for. And for us, we know that, right? But again, unless we start to break down their preconceived notions, or, the idea that they have done their research and they know what they need and they know what they want, unless we do that with asking questions like, have you ever done a project before? We're not really going to get anywhere with them. And then the other question, if you didn't ask it at your pre-call, or maybe it's another question to ask, or I'm sorry, something that you ask again, just to reiterate, if it's something they've been planning for, or if it's something that they've been, wanting to do for a long time. And the reason it's not just a question about financing, it's also a question about, if they've been thinking about doing the siding on their house for 2 years or 3 years, it's a really big decision to them, because they're invested in it. It's a project that they're invested in because they've been thinking about doing it for a long time. And when somebody's thinking about doing something for a long time, you have a much better chance of building value than if they're just like, no, I just have to replace my roof. It's like, okay, right. There's not much of an emotional connection to the project. Now we've got to talk about some other things. We've got to hit on some other things during our presentation, because replacing a roof just isn't a sexy improvement, or a really, it's not something that's, people are looking forward to, like a siding job or a kitchen remodel or whatever, right? So that's why that question is so important. So we really get to dig into what is motivating this project. Have they been thinking about that? And can we really start to build value based on their investment in it? The other thing is trying to figure out, like, what the homeowner's biggest concerns about the project are. And when we started asking questions along this line about, like, what are their biggest concerns, what are their fears, things like that, what we found out is that most people hadn't really thought about anything related to how badly things can go if they hire the wrong contractor. Not even a little bit. And again, it's because they really don't think about that, because it's not something that they've done before. It's not something that's going to be, they don't have the context to really think about that unless they've had a bad experience with a contractor before. And if they have, that's good for us, because we can really talk about that. So thinking about things in terms of, like, their concerns, and not necessarily product related, but their concerns on how the project goes. Maybe they're going to tell you, they have, and this actually happened to us. Maybe they'll tell you that all of the plants on the front of the house were transplanted from their mother's house, who has since passed, and they're really important to them, right? So, like, asking questions like that gives you a chance to connect with your prospect and humanize you, and you can really start to talk to them about things that might be outside the normal scope. The other thing too is they might tell you some things that you can use during your proposal to hit on how you're solving that problem for them. And again, no other companies are doing this. They're not gonna talk about how they're gonna solve problems, because nobody's even brought those problems up. So that is a huge game changer when you start thinking about it in that context and talking to your homeowner in that context. The other one is, ideally, who do you want to hire? It's a point blank question, right? I mean, we ask our prospects, like, who is it that you want to hire? And again, they look at you like a deer in the headlights, because they haven't really thought deeply about that question. So thinking in context of how do you approach that and how do you address that with your prospect? I mean, we take the straight up approach where we just ask them, We give them a chance to visualize what a quality company looks like to them. We give them a chance to, we kind of visualize with them on what is a good project, what a successful project would look like, what a good company would look like. And the only way we can do that is start to talk to them about those things. It's a really powerful conversation, especially when you have both of them there at the same time. It's the conversation I've had with people over the years about like talking to them about that has just been if I could say that's one of the most important things not to forget to do while you're out there, that would be it. And then being able to price condition. This one takes a little bit of practice. This one takes a little bit of finesse. But I say things like, hey, when you guys had other contractors out here, what products did they discuss with you? And I don't really care what products they discussed with them. I'm trying to figure out how many other contractors they had out. Because when they say, oh, I've had a couple other contractors out or whatever, you say, okay, great. My next comment to them is something like, okay, so you've already gotten a few other estimates, right? And they're like, yeah, I haven't. So, okay, so you know roughly what this project's going to cost, right? Well, yeah, okay. So if you're getting multiple estimates and you kind of roughly know what this project's going to cost, what are you looking to accomplish by getting all of those different estimates? And the reason I say that this takes some finesse is because once you start talking about their perception is now you're starting to talk about money, right? And people get a little weird. And I'll let them off the hook by saying things like, look, I'm not trying to figure out like what the different pricing is. That's not my goal for asking this question. My goal for asking this question is I just want to know, what are you trying to figure out by getting all of these different estimates? I want to be able to help you with the information that you need to make a good decision on who you're going to hire. And the reason I do it that way, with saying that they already roughly know how much this project's going to cost, is because I want them to understand that we're all going to be roughly in the same ballpark. So price isn't really the issue here. Pricing really isn't the issue here, unless they tell you, because I've had people tell me over the years, hey, I'm just trying to get the best price. Then we can have a different conversation. But most people won't say that. Most people will say something like, well, we just want to make sure we're comparing apples to apples. We want to make sure we're looking at, getting all of the things that we need, generic answers like that. And that's where I want to lead them to, because I want them to understand that pricing, choosing a contractor off price, isn't really how you do that. And so for me to price condition them right then and there by saying, hey, okay, so you roughly know how much this is going to cost. You've had several estimates or whatever. Then we have that conversation. If I'm the first guy out there, then the word tracks are going to go a little bit differently. And I'm going to say things like, okay, but you are getting multiple estimates, correct? And they'll say, yes, well, of course. And then I'll ask them the question about, well, what are you hoping to achieve by getting these multiple estimates? And again, they'll start to squirm a little bit. And then you can start talking to them. Hey, listen, I'm not trying to talk about money or pricing with you. What I want to help is to make sure you get all the information that you need so that you make a good decision. And so that is what I mean by price conditioning. Generally speaking, we try to get out there, after other people, but that's what I mean by price conditioning. So to kind of recap here, understanding people don't value experts anymore. So, puking information at them is not going to do any good. They don't think they need you. Going from the vantage point of trying to figure out what they're looking for is a critical way to approach this. Understanding if they've ever done a project like you're out there to see if they've ever done that before is a really good insight to have, so you can understand how to approach it with them. Is it something they've been planning? Or can I create an emotional connection? Are they invested in this project already? Which if they are, you're miles ahead. I don't have to get them invested. Figuring out what their biggest concerns about the project are. understanding who it is they ideally want to hire and helping them visualize that, and then being able to price condition them. Those are 7 game changers that are going to help you change the way that you approach your inspection from a sales standpoint. So after this, we're going to get into how to create a proposal and a presentation that's going to hit on all of those things that you've asked while you're out at the inspection.
It's great points there. That setting the stage and price conditioning is always a difficult thing, because as much as when people say I'm comparing apples to apples, I know that they're looking for the cheaper price.
Not always.
Not always. Just like not always, but it's like a higher probability from what I used to have to deal with. And having that good conversation with them to kind of see where they're at with what they're looking for and stuff, and getting that price conditioning is so important before you actually spend time on that sales call.
So think about it like this. People are taught how to buy cars, right? So people say, okay, I need this car and I need these features and I need this color and all this stuff. And once I've nailed all that down, now I can go shop for the dealership with the best price, right? The problem that the homeowner faces is nobody's actually taught them all of the features that it actually need from a contractor. And so therefore they have a really big blind spot. They're missing a lot of that context. So they've actually skipped to the second step, which is they think they're just going to go out and price shop, right? And because, and over the years, I've heard this so many times, like, the longer I've been in this, the more candid conversations I have with homeowners, right? And I say, okay, so you have 4 estimates laying on the table, right? How are you going to choose? And they look at you because they don't want to tell you price, right? Like they're like, oh, they don't want to tell you price. So what they do is they say, we kind of look and make sure they're all pretty similar. And then we pick the guy in the middle. And then I look at them and say, okay, what if the guy in the middle is the worst contractor out of the 3? Then what? And they're like, I was like, well, how do you know that they're a good company? Just based on how you've done that. So this is why I talk a lot about bringing context to homeowners. Like, it's our job to bring context to the information, but we have to do it with finesse. And the way that we do it is we ask those game changers. We ask those game changing questions. You want to open up the chat to some questions?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, I just wanted to say one of the things, Corey, that I used to do a lot when I was out in the field is when I would go in for projects. I love how you guys say you ask them if they've ever experienced a project like this before. What I used to do is I used to look for something in the house. Usually we did a lot of older homes. So I would look at the floor. If the floor was refinished, I would say, oh, I really like these floors. Did you guys do these yourself? And they'd say, oh, no, we hired somebody to come in and refinish the floors. And it opened up the conversation of like, okay, so you guys have done a project like this before. What did you think? How was that experience? Contractors suck, right? Like, have that conversation. Right? Like, it opens the door to all these conversations that you can have around contracting and how much of a headache the project was and all that stuff. And then it kind of gives you an in of like, okay, this is how we're going to do things and how it's going to be better for you this time.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That is, believe it or not, man, that's gold. When you ask that question, they're like, oh yeah, the last contractor sucked. I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
Right. Because now I can be like, oh, tell me about that. What happened? How did it go? What was so bad? Right. And this is where we talk about, so there are 4 buying frames. And I don't want to get too far into it, but there are 4 buying frames that people use to actually make purchasing decisions. Right. And the 4 buying frames are experience, fear of loss, compare and contrast, and opportunity cost, right? And so and that right there, you're talking about their experience. And so the fear of loss and the experience frame, those are the two most powerful. And so when you can start talking about their experience, and you can start talking about how maybe they had a bad experience, and how you can make them have a better experience, that is powerful.
Solving those pain points right from there. That's the perfect thing.
That's it.
Yeah, the biggest thing is you're exposing the pain points, right? You're finding out what the pain points are. So, and that's huge. Like Corey said, like it gives you insight that's invaluable now to being able to sell your process over the last guys.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's open up the chat for any questions.
I don't see any questions yet. I know Pete asked there. Eduardo had his hand up earlier on. Eduardo, are you still in here? Do you have? Do you want to throw in your question?
And I know Dustin asked earlier too. He said that he's a repairman for Roof Bear, and he's trying to start doing sales on the sales side, just getting started. What would be your advice on the best way to start? I told him, listen close to what we're talking about. But I mean, I think that's a great question, right? Like you're new to sales. I think, I think Amanda had one of her new salespeople joining the call today. So, so I think, for some new salespeople listening in, what are some things, Corey, that you would say, like really focus on, really pay attention to?
So sales is half art, half technical. And, I would say if you're new in sales, the best advice I could give you is there's 3 books you should read. The first one is probably the best book on sales you will ever read, and it is called How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. The principles in that book are timeless. The second one is the book is called To Sell is Human by Daniel Pink. I love him. He's got a lot of research-based information on like how people actually buy and what motivates people to buy. And the third one is Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, because that'll actually teach you how to negotiate a close at the closing table without feeling like you're being high pressure.
Mm-hmm. That's a great
So those 3 books I would definitely read. And if you never read any other sales books right there, those 3 things will hit on everything you need to know about sales.
Never Split the Difference is one of my favorites. Another good one, if I could recommend, I don't know, Corey, if you've read it yet, it's called Selling with the Story. And it really comes down to really being able to tell stories that are going to sell you the jobs, but in short, concise ways that are packed with value, not a rambling story that just goes on and on forever and gets that customer to want to back off. But it's a really, really good book as well.
So let me ask you a question, and I always do this in my sales training with my sales team. When you see a family photo and you're in it, who's the first person you look for?
That's a great question. Me.
Every single time.
Yeah.
What do I look like? Everybody looks for themselves in that family photo first, right? And you actually look at yourself in that family photo for a little while before you start looking at the rest of the family photo. So what does that tell us? That tells us that people are super interested in their own stuff. And so when you tell those stories, which is an amazing insight, when you tell those stories, the way to tell those stories is based on the questions that we ask those people, so we can weave in the stuff that the people told us, because now it's their story. So now I'm telling them their story in a way that I want them to hear, so I can lead them down the path to the sale.
That's fantastic. That's a great one to end off on too. Wow. That's really good.
Corey, Amanda asked if you have any samples of those intro videos that you could share with her.
Yes. shoot me an email. Can you put my email in the chat there? It's Corey, Corey at ssrflorida.com.
SSR, right?
Yep, ssrflorida spelled out.com. And, by the way, guys, if you need fully written SOPs, if you need any of your proposals done, you need a sales pitch deck, you need anything like that, I'm your guy. I have a bunch of resources. We can get those done for you. Just shoot me an email and we'll jump on a Zoom and we'll kind of show you what we've got. We're actually going to preview this stuff in the next one, so you'll actually see how we do all this stuff. But if you need an SOP, you need to be able to train your salespeople, whatever you need, we have the resources. Just shoot me an email. We can help you out.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you guys all for jumping on today. Be sure to join us for the next 2 parts in the series. We're going to cover the proposals and we're going to cover the presentation. And that'll get, David, that'll get to your questions, which are, what are some great closing questions and how do you ask for the sale? That's all going to be covered in that presentation.
Yep. That'll be done in step 3. So our third one, we're going to go through closing questions and how do we actually close the deal.
Awesome.
So stay tuned.
Exciting.
All righty. Thank you, Corey. Great job.
Thanks.
Lots of great information. And we will see you guys. Stay tuned for the next one. We will see you guys in the next series, part of the series.
All right. Thanks, guys.